You want my ID? You better be absolutely sure you want to go down this road, officer, because once I take this out, your career is over." Those were the calm, terrifyingly quiet words of a man in a bespoke suit, standing in a coffee shop in an affluent suburb, surrounded by stunned patrons. The police officer in front of him, Officer Declan Hayes, smirked, hand resting on his taser. He thought he was intimidating a suspect. He thought he was cleaning up the streets. He had no idea he was about to handcuff the assistant special agent in charge of the FBI's Civil Rights Division. What started as a morning coffee run became a national scandal that exposed a city's dark corruption, destroyed a police department's reputation, and cost the taxpayers $5.6 million. This isn't just a story about karma. It's a story about what happens when arrogance meets absolute power. Location: Oakhaven, a wealthy suburb just outside of Chicago. The morning air in Oakhaven was crisp, carrying the scent of fallen maple leaves and expensive espresso. This was the kind of town where the lawns were manicured with surgical precision, the cars were exclusively German or electric, and the police force, the Oakhaven PD, prided itself on keeping the riffraff out. Malik Thorne adjusted the cuffs of his charcoal Armani suit as he stepped out of his black government-issue SUV. Malik wasn't from Oakhaven. He was a man who had grown up in the rougher parts of Southside Chicago, clawed his way through law school, and spent years climbing the ladder of federal law enforcement. Now, he was a legend in the Bureau. He had taken down human trafficking rings in D.C. and rooted out corruption in New Orleans. Today, however, he wasn't hunting criminals. He was hunting caffeine. He was also early for a high-level meeting with Brielle Sutton, the state district attorney. They were scheduled to discuss a joint task force on organized crime, and Brielle had suggested the Bean and Leaf, a trendy high-end coffee spot on Main Street known for its exclusive atmosphere. Malik checked his watch, a vintage Omega, a gift from his wife after his promotion. He had time. He pushed open the glass door of the coffee shop. The bell chimed softly. The interior was an explosion of rustic chic, reclaimed wood, Edison bulbs, and the low hum of indie folk music. The clientele was exactly what you'd expect. Women in yoga pants holding tiny dogs, men in Patagonia vests typing furiously on MacBooks. When Malik walked in, the hum of conversation didn't stop, but it stuttered. He was a tall, broad-shouldered black man in a suit that cost more than most people's cars. He walked with a natural authority, head high, eyes scanning the room out of habit, not malice. But in Oakhaven, authority that didn't wear a badge made people nervous. He approached the counter. The barista, a young college student named Jessica, looked up. She blinked, her smile faltering for a fraction of a second. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice slightly higher than it had been for the customer before him. "Good morning," Malik said, his voice a deep, smooth baritone. He smiled warmly, trying to disarm the tension he was used to sensing. "I'll have a black coffee, dark roast, and a blueberry scone, please." "For here or to go?" Jessica glanced past him towards the window. "For here? I'm meeting a colleague." "Okay, that'll be $12.50. Malik tapped his card. He moved to the pickup counter and waited. He pulled out his phone to check his emails. A message from his deputy director. "The indictment is sealed. We move on the cartel." Malik allowed himself a small, satisfied smirk. It was going to be a good day. He took his coffee and the scone, scanning the room for a seat. He chose a small table near the window, wanting to keep an eye on the street for Brielle's arrival. He sat down, crossed his legs, and took a sip of the steaming coffee. Outside, a patrol car rolled slowly down Main Street. It was a Dodge Charger, black and white, with the words, "To protect and serve," emblazoned on the side. Behind the wheel was Officer Declan Hayes. Hayes was a veteran of the force. He was the kind of cop who peaked in high school. Football captain, bully, loud. He had a thick neck, a buzz cut that was starting to gray, and a personnel file filled with excessive force complaints that had all been conveniently swept under the rug by the police union. Hayes was bored. Oakhaven was quiet. Too quiet. He was itching for something to happen, something that would let him flex the authority he felt he was owed. As he cruised past the Bean and Leaf, his eyes darted to the window. He saw the patrons, the regulars, and then he saw Malik. To Hayes, Malik didn't look like a federal agent preparing for a multi-state takedown. To Hayes's prejudiced eyes, Malik looked like an anomaly. A black man in a suit, sitting alone, watching the street. He's casing the place, Hayes thought. Or he's waiting for a drop. Hayes pulled the cruiser over, tires crunching against the curb. He didn't call it in. He didn't run the plate of the black SUV parked nearby. He just put the car in park, adjusted his utility belt, and stepped out. Inside the shop, the atmosphere shifted instantly. The moment the heavy door opened and the uniformed officer stepped in, the chatter died down. People looked from the cop to the man in the window. Malik Thorne didn't look up. He was reading a briefing on his phone, but his training kicked in. He registered the heavy footsteps, the jingle of keys and equipment, the silence of the room. He knew exactly who had entered. Ignore him, Malik told himself. Just a local cop doing his rounds, but the footsteps didn't head to the counter. They headed straight for him. Officer Hayes stopped at Malik's table. He stood there for a long, uncomfortable silence, his shadow falling over Malik's phone screen. Malik took a slow breath. He swiped his phone screen off, placed it face down on the table, and looked up. He kept his expression neutral. The bureau face. "Can I help you, officer?" Malik asked politely. Hayes didn't smile. He hooked his thumbs into his vest, looming over the seated man. "You live around here?" Malik picked up his coffee cup. "Is there a problem?" "I asked you a question," Hayes said, his voice loud enough for the tables nearby to hear. "Do you live in this neighborhood?" "I don't see how that's relevant," Malik said calmly. "I'm a paying customer having a coffee." "We've had some complaints," Hayes lied. It was a standard tactic. Manufacture a complaint to justify an ID check. Reports of suspicious activity. Men matching your description, loitering in businesses. Malik almost laughed. Matching my description? A man in a three-piece suit eating a scone? A woman at a nearby table stifled a nervous giggle. Hayes's face turned a shade of red. He didn't like being mocked. "Stand up," Hayes commanded. Malik didn't move. He leaned back in his chair, interlocking his fingers. "Officer, I am waiting for a meeting. I haven't committed any crime. I haven't broken any laws. Unless you can articulate a reasonable suspicion that I am involved in criminal activity, I'm going to finish my coffee." This was the moment, the fork in the road. A smarter cop would have walked away. A smarter cop would have realized that men who speak with that level of calm, legal precision usually have the power to back it up. But Declan Hayes wasn't a smart cop. He was a bully who had been challenged in front of an audience. I said, "Stand up." Hayes barked, his hand dropping to the baton on his belt. "I want to see some ID now." Malik sighed. It was a sigh of deep exhaustion. He looked at the officer with eyes that had seen cartel bosses and serial killers, eyes that held zero fear of a suburban patrolman. "Officer," Malik said, his voice dropping an octave, deadly serious, "you are making a mistake, a very expensive mistake. I suggest you walk away." Hayes grabbed Malik's arm. The moment Hayes's hand touched the expensive fabric of Malik's suit jacket, the dynamic in the room shattered. "Get your hands off me," Malik said. He didn't shout. He didn't flinch. He simply stated it as a fact. "You're resisting," Hayes yelled, playing to the imaginary camera he hoped would support his report later. He yanked Malik upward. Malik stood up. He was taller than Hayes. He didn't pull away violently, but he held his ground with the solidity of a granite statue. "I am not resisting," Malik said clearly, looking toward the security camera in the corner of the ceiling. "I am complying with your physical force, but I am verbally stating that I do not consent to this search or seizure. I have done nothing wrong." "Turn around. Hands behind your back." Hayes was running on adrenaline and ego now. He spun Malik around, shoving him against the window. Malik's coffee cup tipped over, spilling dark roast across the table and dripping onto the floor. "You're under arrest for disorderly conduct and failure to identify," Hayes spat, grabbing his handcuffs. "Failure to identify is not a primary offense in this state, unless I'm being lawfully detained for a crime," Malik recited. "What crime am I being detained for? Loitering? Trespassing?" "The owner hasn't asked me to leave," Malik said, glancing at Jessica, the barista. She was frozen behind the counter, looking terrified. "Miss, have you asked me to leave?" Jessica stammered. No, I... "Shut up," Hayes yelled at the barista. He clicked the first cuff onto Malik's left wrist. The cold steel bit into the skin. Malik closed his eyes for a second. He was angry, furious, actually, but he knew that if he reacted, if he even twitched the wrong way, this man might shoot him. He had seen the files. He knew the statistics. He had to be perfect. "Officer," Malik said, his voice low. "In the inside pocket of my jacket, there is a leather wallet. Before you finish putting those cuffs on, I strongly suggest you look at what is inside it." "I don't care what's in your wallet," Hayes cranked Malik's other arm back. "You can show it to the judge. It's not a driver's license," Malik said. "It's my credentials." Hayes paused. The word credentials hung in the air. "Credentials?" Hayes scoffed. "What? You a security guard? A PI? Check it," Malik challenged. Hayes hesitated. The confidence in Malik's voice was unnerving. With one cuff on and the other dangling, Hayes reached into Malik's suit pocket. He felt the leather wallet. He pulled it out. It wasn't a standard bifold. It was a badge wallet. Hayes flipped it open. The gold badge gleamed under the coffee shop lights. It was heavy, detailed. The eagle at the top, the bold blue letters. Federal Bureau of Investigation. Special Agent Malik Thorne. Hayes stared at it. His brain tried to process the information, but it clashed violently with the narrative he had built in his head. "Fake!" his brain screamed. "It has to be fake. You can buy these online." "Nice toy," Hayes sneered, tossing the badge onto the coffee-soaked table. "Impersonating a federal officer. That's a felony, pal. Now you're really in deep." The crowd gasped. A man in the corner stood up. "Officer, that looks real." "Sit down," Hayes shouted at the patron. He slammed the second cuff onto Malik's wrist. "You think I'm stupid? You think an FBI agent is sitting in a coffee shop in Oak Haven on a morning?" Malik took a deep breath. "My badge number is 8940. My supervisor is Assistant Director Alana Voss. If you run my name through NCIC, it will flag as a protected federal employee. If you put me in that car, you are kidnapping a federal agent." "We'll see about that," Hayes said, shoving Malik towards the door. As they marched out, the patrons had their phones out. They were recording everything. The video of a calm, well-dressed black man being shoved out of a coffee shop by a red-faced screaming cop was already hitting Instagram and TikTok. Outside, Hayes pushed Malik against the hood of the cruiser. The metal was cold. Hayes began to pat him down, roughly checking for weapons. He found Malik's service weapon, a Glock 19M, in his hip holster. "Gun!" Hayes shouted, jumping back and drawing his own weapon. "He's got a gun." "I am a federal agent," Malik said, his face pressed against the hood. "That is my service weapon. It is registered to the United States government. Shut your mouth." Hayes ripped the gun from Malik's holster and placed it on the roof of the car, far out of reach. "You're lucky I didn't drop you right here." Hayes keyed his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 4 Alpha. I have one male in custody, uncooperative, armed, possible false credentials, requesting transport. Copy 4 Alpha." The dispatcher crackled. Malik looked sideways. He could see down the street. A silver Mercedes-Benz sedan was turning the corner. It was moving fast. It pulled up directly behind the police cruiser, blocking it in. The door flew open. Out stepped a woman in a sharp navy blazer. She had blonde hair tied back in a severe bun and was holding a briefcase. It was Brielle Sutton, the district attorney. She froze. She saw the police car. She saw the coffee shop patrons watching from the window. And then she saw the man pressed against the hood of the cruiser, handcuffed. Her face went pale. Then it went red with fury. "Officer!" Brielle screamed, dropping her briefcase on the pavement. "What the hell are you doing?" Hayes turned around, annoyed. "Back off, lady. This is an active crime scene." Brielle marched up to him. She was short, but she walked with the force of a hurricane. "I am not a lady. I am the district attorney for this county, and the man you have handcuffed is the assistant special agent in charge of the FBI. Hayes blinked. He looked at Brielle. He looked at Malik. He looked at the badge wallet still sitting on the table inside the shop through the window. He had a fake badge," Hayes stammered, his confidence beginning to crack. "He was loitering. He had a gun." "He is allowed to have a gun," Brielle yelled right in his face. "He is a federal agent. Uncuff him now." Hayes stepped back, his hands raised in surrender. Malik looked at Brielle Sutton. "Brielle, call Harlan Fisk. Call the media. I want everyone to see this." The cameras were rolling. The nightmare for Oak Haven was just beginning. The ride to the Oak Haven police station was less of a transport and more of a funeral procession for Officer Declan Hayes' career. Hayes drove in silence. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. His eyes kept darting to the rearview mirror, not to look at his prisoner, but to look at the convoy behind him. 3 black Chevrolet Tahoes followed closely, their grille lights flashing silently. They weren't aggressive, but they were relentless. Every turn Hayes made, they made. Every time he braked, they braked. It was a predator pack stalking wounded prey. In the back seat, Malik Thorne sat comfortably despite the handcuffs. He had shifted his position so he could look out the window. He wasn't thinking about the pain in his wrists. He was thinking about Title 18, Section 242 of the U.S. Code, deprivation of rights under color of law. "You're quiet back there," Hayes said, his voice cracking. He was fishing. He wanted Malik to scream, to threaten him, to give him something, anything he could use to justify what he had done. If he threatens me, Hayes thought, I can add a charge. Terroristic threats. Something. Malik didn't answer. He just watched the manicured lawns of Oak Haven roll by. I said, "You're quiet." Hayes snapped, his bravado thinning like cheap paint. You know, if you just apologize for resisting, maybe I can talk to the chief. We can work this out. A citation. You walk away. Malik finally turned his head. He looked through the plexiglass divider, locking eyes with Hayes in the mirror. Officer Hayes, Malik said, his voice terrifyingly devoid of emotion. You are under the impression that this is a negotiation. It is not. You have already committed the act. The timeline is set. Anything you say to me now is just evidence I will use at your sentencing hearing. Hayes slammed his hand on the steering wheel. You think you're untouchable because you have a badge. This is my town. The chief will back me. The union will back me. Drive the car, Malik said. They pulled into the station lot. Usually this was a safe space for Hayes, the Blue Castle, but today it looked like a trap. As Hayes parked the cruiser in the Sallyport, the Tahoes swarmed the entrance, blocking the exit. Hayes got out and opened the back door. He grabbed Malik's arm to pull him out, but his grip was looser now, uncertain. Walk, Hayes muttered. They entered the booking area. The desk sergeant, an older man named Harlan, looked up from his computer. He had a half-eaten donut in one hand. Hey, Declan, what you got? Another stray? Harlan joked, not looking up fully. Process him, Hayes said, pushing Malik towards the counter. Disorderly conduct, resisting arrest, impersonating an officer. Harlan looked up. He saw the expensive suit. He saw the calm demeanor. And then he saw the face. Harlan froze. Declan. Just book him, Harlan. Hayes was sweating profusely now. Declan, Harlan whispered, standing up slowly. Look at the monitors. Hayes looked up at the wall of security screens. The lobby camera showed a scene of absolute chaos. The front doors had been thrown open. 6 FBI agents in tactical vests were securing the perimeter. District Attorney Brielle Sutton was standing at the front desk, screaming at the receptionist so loud the audio was clipping on the monitor, and behind her, a news van was already pulling up. Who is this guy? Harlan asked, his face pale. Malik leaned forward against the counter, the handcuffs clinking on the laminate. My name is Special Agent Malik Thorne, and I'd like to speak to your chief now. Just then, the heavy steel door separating the booking area from the offices flew open. Chief Vance Reed stormed in. Reed was a man who spent more time at country club dinners than crime scenes. He had silver hair, a tan that was too orange, and a temper that was legendary. He was holding a phone to his ear, listening to someone screaming on the other end. He hung up and looked at Hayes. Then he looked at Malik. Take those cuffs off him, Reed said. His voice was a low growl. Chief, he resisted. Hayes started, desperate. He has a fake badge. I said take them off. Reed roared, the sound echoing off the concrete walls. Do you have any idea who is on the phone? The Attorney General of Illinois. The governor's office is on hold online, too. Hayes fumbled for his keys. His hands were shaking so badly he dropped them. They clattered on the floor, sliding toward Malik's feet. Malik didn't move. He looked down at the keys, then up at Hayes. Pick them up, Malik said. Hayes bent down, humiliated, snatching the keys. He unlocked the cuffs. Malik rubbed his wrists. He checked his watch. He adjusted his suit jacket. Then he looked at the chief. Chief Reed, Malik said calmly, I'm keeping these cuffs as evidence. Bag them. Agent Thorne, Reed said, putting on his best political smile, walking over with an extended hand. I am so terribly sorry. Clearly, there has been a massive communication breakdown. Officer Hayes here is overzealous. We can fix this. Come to my office. Let's have some coffee. Real coffee, not the swill from the break room. Malik looked at the chief's hand. He didn't shake it. I don't want coffee, Chief. I want to file a formal complaint, and then I want to sit in your interrogation room. My interrogation room? Reed blinked. Sir, you're free to go. We're dropping everything. Obviously. No. Malik said, I was arrested. I was brought here. I want the full experience, because if we stop now, your lawyers will argue later that it was a brief detention. You booked me. Now I want you to interview me on the record with cameras rolling. Reed looked at Hayes, his eyes promising murder. Hayes, my office now. No, Malik interjected. Hayes stays. He's the arresting officer. He needs to write his report. If he leaves, he has time to get his story straight with his union rep. He writes it now, in the squad room, alone. Reed realized he had lost control of his own station. The FBI agents were now visible through the glass of the booking room door, watching like sentinels. Fine, Reed hissed. Hayes, go to the squad room. Start typing. If you leave out a single comma, I will fire you myself. Hayes shuffled away, a dead man walking. Malik turned to the chief. After you, Chief. The interrogation room at Oak Haven PD was standard. Cinder block walls painted a depressing shade of beige. A metal table bolted to the floor. A two-way mirror that everyone knew was there. Malik sat in the suspect chair. Chief Vance Reed sat across from him. The district attorney, Brielle Sutton, stood in the corner, arms crossed, watching like a hawk. Agent Thorne, Reed started, folding his hands on the table. Look, I've known Declan Hayes. He's old school. He makes mistakes, but he's a family man. He has 2 kids. I have 3, Malik said flatly. And my eldest son is young. He drives a Honda Civic. He drives through towns like this to get to soccer practice. If Officer Hayes had pulled him over instead of me, would my son be sitting here? Or would he be in the morgue? The room went silent. That's speculative, Reed said, tugging at his collar. We're not here to discuss what-ifs. We are here to discuss pattern and practice. Malik corrected him. You see, Chief, while I was sitting in the back of that cruiser, I made a call. My team in Chicago pulled the stats for Oak Haven PD. Malik pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket, the briefing he had been reading on his phone before the arrest. On the back, he had scribbled notes during the ride over. Officer Hayes has excessive force complaints, Malik read. Them involved minorities. 0 were sustained by your Internal Affairs Division. You signed off on every single exoneration, Chief. Reed's face hardened. Internal Affairs is an independent body. Internal Affairs is Sergeant Whitaker, who I believe is Hayes's brother-in-law. Is that correct? Reed went pale. How do you? I'm the FBI, Chief. We know everything. But here is the problem for you. This isn't just about a racist cop anymore. It's about a corrupt department, and you are the head of the snake. Brielle Sutton stepped forward. Chief, I'm advising you right now. I will not be prosecuting Agent Thorne, obviously, but I will be opening an investigation into your department's use of force, effective immediately. You can't do that, Brielle. We're on the same team, Reed pleaded. Not anymore, Brielle said coldly. You embarrassed me. You embarrassed the county, and you violated the civil rights of a federal agent. I'm not going down with your ship. At that moment, the door opened. A young officer stuck his head in. Chief, there's a problem in the lobby. What now? Reed snapped. It's the press. They're everywhere. And there's a lawyer here, Harlan Fisk. Reed put his head in his hands. Harlan Fisk was the most feared civil rights attorney in the Midwest. He sued cities for sport. If he was here, it meant the lawsuit had already been drafted. Malik stood up. "That's my counsel." I called him from the coffee shop. Malik walked out of the interrogation room. As he entered the lobby, the flashbulbs were blinding. Dozens of reporters were crammed into the small space. Harlan Fisk, a tall man in an immaculate pinstripe suit, was already giving a statement. A flagrant abuse of power. Fisk was booming to the cameras. Officer Hayes saw a black man in a coffee shop and decided that his mere existence was a crime. This city will pay for that mistake. Malik didn't stop to talk to the press. He didn't have to. The image of him walking out of the police station, flanked by FBI agents, adjusting his cuffs, said more than any soundbite could. He walked to his SUV, which had been driven over by one of his agents. Brielle Sutton followed him out. "Malik, wait." He turned. "Brielle, I'm sorry our meeting got derailed." "Screw the meeting," she said. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Malik said, "but they aren't." "Brielle, I want Hayes's badge, and I want it by the end of the week." "You'll have it," she promised. "But Malik, the lawsuit, Fisk is talking millions." Malik looked back at the station. He saw Hayes watching from a second-story window, a silhouette of regret. "It's not about the money, Brielle," Malik said. "It's about the cost. They need to learn that freedom isn't free, but oppression is going to be very, very expensive." Malik got into his SUV. "Let's go," he told his driver. As they pulled away, Malik pulled out his phone. He had a new email. It was the security footage from the Bean and Leaf. The owner, terrified of being implicated, had sent it directly to the FBI tip line. Malik watched the video. It was perfect. High definition, audio included. It showed Malik sitting calmly. It showed Hayes aggressive, rude, and unprovoked. He forwarded the video to Harlan Fisk with a simple subject line: "The smoking gun." The first domino had fallen. Now the rest would come crashing down. Back inside the station, Chief Vance Reed was in crisis mode. He marched into the squad room where Hayes was sitting, staring at a blank Word document. "You idiot," Reed hissed. "You total, complete idiot." "Chief, I can fix this," Hayes said, standing up. "I looked up the law. If I can prove I had reasonable suspicion based on a 911 call, we're good. Qualified immunity?" "There was no 911 call, Declan." "We can make one," Hayes whispered. The room went deadly silent. "What did you say?" "I have a burner phone," Hayes said, his eyes desperate. "Manic. We call it in now. Retroactive. Say the timestamp was off. We say someone called in a man with a gun. That gives me probable cause to search him. If I have probable cause, the lawsuit goes away." Reed stared at him. It was illegal. It was a felony. It was insane. But Reed was thinking about his pension. He was thinking about the election. He was thinking about the $1 million hole this was about to blow in the city budget. Reed walked over to the door, closed it, and locked it. He turned off his body camera. "How do we do it?" Reed asked. They were about to dig their hole so deep they would never climb out. Because what they didn't know was that Malik's watch, a seemingly analog Omega, was actually a piece of bureau tech. It had been recording audio the entire time, and it was still recording in the evidence bag sitting on the chief's desk just outside the thin glass wall. The squad room of the Oak Haven Police Department felt like a pressure cooker. The blinds were drawn. The door was locked. Chief Vance Reed sat at his desk, his face bathed in the pale blue light of his computer monitor. Officer Declan Hayes stood behind him, pacing nervously, biting his fingernails until they bled. "Are you sure this is going to work?" Hayes whispered. "If the feds find out we tampered with the server—" "Shut up!" Reed snapped, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "The feds aren't looking at our local dispatch server. They're looking at you. And if we give them a reason for your stop, the heat dies down. We just need probable cause." Reed navigated to the computer-aided dispatch (CAD) system. He had administrative privileges, the God mode of the police department. He could view, edit, and delete logs. It was a feature designed for correcting typos, not rewriting history. "Okay," Reed muttered. "The time of the incident was, so we need a call." He opened a new entry. Call type, suspicious person, man with a gun. Location, the Bean and Leaf, 114 Main Street. Caller, anonymous. Notes, male, black, suit. Patron saw a firearm in his waistband. Fear for safety. Reed hit enter. The log slotted itself into the timeline, looking indistinguishable from the real calls surrounding it. There. Reed exhaled, leaning back. Dispatch received a call reporting an armed subject matching the suspect's description. "That's why you entered. That's why you were aggressive. You thought you were engaging an active shooter." Hayes looked at the screen. A wave of relief washed over him. "It looks real." "It is real now," Reed said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "This is the official record. When that lawyer, Harlan Fisk, subpoenas the logs, this is what he gets. He sees this. He knows he can't win a civil rights case. He settles for a few grand to go away." They shared a look. Two men bound by a secret that could send them both to prison. "Now," Reed said, standing up, "go wash your face. You look guilty. I'm going to release Thorne. We give him his property back. We apologize, and we get him the hell out of here. Deal?" Reed unlocked the door. He walked out to the desk sergeant's counter. A clear plastic evidence bag sat there. Inside was Malik's Omega watch, his badge wallet, and his phone. Reed picked up the bag. He didn't notice the small rhythmic pulse of a tiny red pixel on the face of the watch dial. He didn't know that the Omega was a modified piece of surveillance tech issued to high-ranking bureau agents for undercover work. It had a battery life and a microphone sensitive enough to hear a pin drop in the next room, and it had been sitting feet away from the squad room door the entire time. Reed walked into the lobby, forcing a smile. Malik was standing there, his attorney, Harlan Fisk, beside him. "Agent Thorne," Reed said, handing over the bag. "Here are your personal effects. Again, I want to extend the department's sincerest apologies. Officer Hayes here is overzealous. We can fix this." Malik took the bag. He didn't smile. He opened it slowly, taking out his watch. He strapped it onto his wrist. He tapped the glass face once. The screen flickered. A tiny icon appeared. Recording saved. Malik's eyes narrowed slightly. He looked at the chief. He looked at the squad room door. He did the math. "Incomplete information," Malik repeated slowly. "Is that what we're calling it? We're conducting a full internal review." Reed lied smoothly. "But we believe there was a dispatch error regarding a call for service." "A mix-up. A call for service," Harlan Fisk repeated, his lawyer instincts flaring up. "My client was buying a scone. There was no call." "We'll see what the logs say," Reed said, his confidence returning. "Have a good day, gentlemen." Malik and Fisk walked out of the station. The autumn sun was setting, casting long, dark shadows over the parking lot. Once they were in the safety of Fisk's black sedan, Malik turned to his lawyer. "Harlan," Malik said quietly, "don't settle." "I wasn't planning to," Fisk said. "But if they produce a 911 log, It complicates things. It gives them cover. Malik held up his wrist. He tapped the watch face, bringing up the audio file waveform. They fabricated it, Malik said. I have them. You have what? I have the chief and Hayes conspiring to fake the log, Malik said. It's all on here, crystal clear. Fisk looked at the watch, then at Malik. A slow, shark-like grin spread across the lawyer's face. Malik, Fisk said, do not give this to them yet. Do not give this to the press. Why not? Because, Fisk said, starting the engine. If we release it now, they resign. They get a slap on the wrist. Maybe probation. Fisk pulled out of the parking lot, glancing back at the police station. We wait for the deposition, Fisk explained. We put them under oath. We let them lie on the official record. We let them commit perjury. And then we drop the hammer. That's how we get the $5.6 million. And that's how we make sure they never wear a badge again. Location: the law offices of Fisk and Associates, Chicago. The conference room was all glass and mahogany overlooking the Chicago skyline. It was a setting designed to intimidate. On one side of the massive table sat Officer Declan Hayes and Chief Vance Reed. Next to them was the city attorney, a nervous man named Serena Landon, who smelled faintly of antacids. On the other side sat Malik Thorne and Harlan Fisk. A court reporter sat at the head of the table, her fingers poised over her stenotype machine. A video camera was set up on a tripod, the red light blinking. This is the deposition of Officer Declan Hayes, Fisk announced for the record. Case number CV-890, Thorne versus City of Oakhaven. Fisk started slowly. He asked about Hayes's training, his background, his history of disciplinary actions. Hayes answered with rehearsed arrogance. He felt safe. The fake CAD log had been submitted into discovery. As far as Hayes knew, the evidence supported him. Officer Hayes, Fisk said, leaning forward, let's talk about the morning. Why did you enter the Bean and Leaf? I was responding to a dispatch call, Hayes said confidently. Report of a man with a gun. I see, Fisk said, shuffling some papers. And you received this call. How? Over the radio. It came up on my computer terminal. Hayes lied. Dispatch sent it through. And the description. Male, black, wearing a suit, gun in his waistband. Serena Landon, the city attorney, stopped clicking her pen. She sensed a shift in the air. And you are absolutely certain this call existed before you entered the shop? Fisk pressed. You didn't decide to harass Mr. Thorne and then look for a justification later. Absolutely not. Hayes scoffed. That would be illegal. Chief Reed. Fisk turned his attention to the chief. You oversaw the retrieval of these logs. Can you verify their authenticity? Reed adjusted his tie. Yes, I pulled the logs myself. The call came in. Interesting. Fisk reached into his briefcase. The room went silent. The city attorney, Serena Landon, stopped clicking her pen. She sensed a shift in the air. I have here, Fisk said, pulling out a USB drive, a forensic digital analysis of the Oakhaven PD server. But more importantly, I have a recording. Objection, Landon stammered. Recording? What recording? My client, Fisk gestured to Malik, is a high-level federal agent. He wears a device that records audio in high fidelity for evidence gathering in the field. On the day of his arrest, his property was seized. It was placed in an evidence bag on the desk sergeant's counter. Reed's face drained of blood. He remembered where he had stood. He remembered the door he had left unlocked. This recording, Fisk continued, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper, captured a conversation between Chief Reed and Officer Hayes that same day. Fisk plugged the USB into his laptop. He turned the volume up. The voice of Chief Reed filled the room, clear and undeniable. "We just need probable cause. The time of the incident was, so we need a call." Then, Hayes's voice. "It looks real." And Reed again. "It is real now. When that lawyer, Harlan Fisk, subpoenas the logs, this is what he gets." Silence. Absolute suffocating silence. Hayes looked like he was going to vomit. Reed was staring at the table, his mouth slightly open, his career evaporating in real time. The city attorney, Serena Landon, closed her folder. She pushed her chair back. I need a recess. I need to call the mayor." "No." Malik Thorne spoke for the first time. He stood up. Malik walked around the table. He didn't look like a victim. He looked like the assistant special agent in charge. "There will be no recess," Malik said, "because this is no longer a civil deposition." The door to the conference room opened. 4 FBI agents walked in. They weren't wearing tactical gear this time. They were in suits, but the handcuffs on their belts were very real. Vance Reed, Declan Hayes. One of the agents said, "You are under arrest for conspiracy to deprive civil rights, obstruction of justice, and perjury." Hayes stood up, panic in his eyes. "You can't arrest us here. We have immunity." "Qualified immunity protects you from civil lawsuits for mistakes," Malik said, leaning in close to Hayes's face. "It does not protect you from federal prison for felonies." The agents cuffed Hayes. Then they cuffed the chief. The camera was still rolling. The court reporter was still typing, capturing every word of their downfall. "Ms. Landon," Fisk said to the terrified city attorney, "the settlement offer just went up. We are now asking for $5.6 million, and we want a federal consent decree over the Oak Haven Police Department. If you say no, we release this audio to the nightly news." "No." Serena Landon looked at the handcuffed chief, then at the furious FBI agent. I'll draft the check," Landon whispered. Malik watched as Hayes and Reed were marched out of the law firm, past a lobby full of stunned secretaries and clients. "Hard karma," Fisk murmured, watching them go. "Not karma," Malik corrected him, buttoning his jacket. "Justice. Karma is luck. Justice is work." Location: United States District Court, Northern District of Illinois. The courtroom was packed. Every seat was taken by reporters, civil rights activists, and the stunned citizens of Oak Haven, who had watched their city's reputation crumble on national television. Declan Hayes and Vance Reed stood before Judge Alana Voss. They weren't wearing uniforms or suits anymore. They were wearing orange jumpsuits. The transformation was startling. Hayes, once bulky and arrogant, looked deflated, having lost pounds in pre-trial confinement. Reed looked like a ghost, his hands trembling as he gripped the defense table. Judge Voss, a woman known for her harsh sentencing in corruption cases, adjusted her glasses and looked down at the two men. "In my years on the bench," Judge Voss began, her voice echoing in the silent room, "I have seen criminals who rob because they are hungry. I have seen men who kill because they are angry. But what stands before me today is something far worse. You two men robbed this community of its trust, and you tried to kill the very concept of justice simply because your egos could not handle a black man with authority." Hayes looked down at his shackles. "Declan Hayes," the judge continued, "for the deprivation of rights under color of law and for the falsification of federal records, I sentence you to years in federal prison. There will be no possibility of parole." Hayes's wife, sitting in the back row, let out a sob. Hayes closed his eyes. Years. He would miss his children growing up. He would miss his daughter's graduation. He would miss everything. Vance Reed. The judge turned to the former chief. You were the captain of the ship. You were supposed to stop this. Instead, you steered it into the rocks to save your own skin. For conspiracy and obstruction of justice, I sentence you to years. As the marshals moved in to take them away, Malik Thorne stood up in the front row. Hayes paused as he was being led out. He looked at Malik. There was no anger left in Hayes's eyes, only a deep, hollow regret. He opened his mouth to say something. Perhaps. I'm sorry. But the marshal shoved him forward. Move it, inmate, the marshal said. The word inmate hit the room like a hammer. The transition was complete. The predator had become the prisoner. But the punishment didn't end with prison. The City Council of Oakhaven held an emergency meeting. The town hall was overflowing. The citizens were furious, not at Malik Thorne, but at the police department. The settlement had been finalized, $5.6 million. Because the police department's insurance policy had a willful misconduct exclusion clause, the insurance company refused to pay. The fraudulent dispatch logs and the conspiracy proved that this wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate crime. That meant the $5.6 million had to come directly from the city's general fund. The mayor, sweating under the glare of the lights, announced the cuts. To pay this judgment, the mayor stammered, "We will be forced to cancel the new high school football stadium renovation. We are also reducing the library hours by 50%, and we are raising property taxes by 4.5%. The room erupted. The wealthy residents of Oakhaven, who had blindly supported the police, were finally feeling the cost of that support. They realized too late that corruption isn't just a moral failing, it's a financial liability. The blue wall of silence had just cost them their football stadium. Malik Thorne watched the town hall meeting on the news from his office in Chicago. He turned the TV off. You got everything you wanted, Brielle Sutton said. She had resigned as DA and was now working in private practice, having been unable to stomach the corruption she had uncovered. They're in prison. The city is paying. You won. Not yet, Malik said. There's one last thing. Malik picked up the check for $5.6 million. It was sitting on his desk. It was life-changing money. He could retire. He could buy a house in the Caribbean. He could disappear. But Malik Thorne was an FBI agent. He didn't do this for the payout. I'm not keeping it, Malik said. Brielle looked at him, stunned. Malik? Are you crazy? I don't want their money, Malik said, standing up and walking to the window. I want their legacy. Malik picked up a file. I've already filed the paperwork. I'm using the entire $5.6 million to start a nonprofit organization based right there in Oakhaven. What kind of organization? Malik smiled. It was the first time he had truly smiled since the coffee shop incident. It's a legal defense fund. It will provide free, high-end legal representation for anyone in the county who is wrongfully stopped, searched, or detained by the police. We're going to hire the best civil rights lawyers in the state. We're going to audit every arrest. We're going to sue them every single time they step out of line. Brielle's jaw dropped. Malik, you're going to use their own money to police the police. Forever. And the best part. Malik handed her the brochure for the new foundation. Brielle read the name on the front. She gasped, then burst out laughing. The Hayes Reed Center for Civil Rights. You named it after them. I want their names to be remembered, Malik said, his eyes hard. I want every cop in that station to drive past that building every day. I want them to see the names Hayes and Reed in big, bold letters. I want them to remember that if they abuse their power, they won't just go to prison. They will unknowingly fund the very people they tried to oppress. Malik Thorne put on his sunglasses. Come on, Brielle. Let's go get some coffee. I know a place. And that is how a simple morning coffee run took down an entire corrupt administration. Officer Hayes thought he was detaining a suspect. Instead, he detained the architect of his own destruction. This story serves as a brutal reminder. Authority is not a license to bully. In the digital age, where cameras are everywhere, and the truth is just a subpoena away, the old ways of policing are dying. Hayes and Reed learned the hard way that when you strip away a man's rights, you better be ready to pay the price. For the citizens of Oakhaven, the million tax hike is a daily reminder that silence in the face of injustice is never free. And for Malik Thorne, he proved that the most dangerous weapon a man can carry isn't a gun. It's the truth. If this story got your blood boiling, or if you cheered when Malik revealed that recording, hit that like button right now. It helps us get these stories out to more people. What do you think about Malik's final move? Was naming the legal center after the corrupt cops the ultimate revenge, or should he have kept the millions for himself? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you want more stories of hard karma and justice served cold, make sure you subscribe and ring that notification bell. You don't want to miss what we have coming next. Stay safe, know your rights, and I'll see you in the next.